All right, what's up, guys? Chuck and Brian back Friday morning for me, Friday afternoon for Brian. Bring you another Underdog Fantasy, Occupy Fantasy Best Ball stream. We're up to 22. Can you believe we've done 22 drafts already? It's June 21st. How we doing, Brian?
I know it's crazy. We got a comment on yesterday's video that was saying, "How are you guys even doing drafts this early?" It's like, well, we've got 22 now publicized drafts, countless unpublicized drafts. So yeah, we're in it. And for me, Chuck, just to answer that question off the bat, first of all, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Secondly, I'm doing a lot of these drafts here. Yes, I want to win money with it, but really, I'm using these as practice, different strategies,
Mhm.
different timing, just to get ready for the big boy, the Best Ball Mania.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing too. And I'm 500 drafts in now. It's great, but I'm still finding myself making mistakes. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I hope to sort that out. I'm withholding most of my volume for later in the summer. I'm up to 21 best ball manias. I've got 67 in the puppy too. I'm not sure if I'm going to max it. I'll get at least 100, but it's like half full now. The fill rate's actually slower than I expected, but I'm sure it'll be full by this weekend. And before the show, we were talking. You mentioned that you entered a bunch of slow drafts in this one.
Yeah, I think so. We do all these drafts on stream, and we have themes or things we discuss while we're drafting as a higher level to tie back to your own drafts. And I think two things I want to discuss today, Chuck, is handling a bunch of slow drafts at once, which is what I'm doing right now. And two, we've seen some commentary on Twitter about these automated tools that are helping people draft. So as we go throughout the show, we'll talk about both of those things. But yeah, right now I have 40 puppies that I'm drafting live, and yeah, it is a little bit of a struggle because I do my best work when it's live, and I'm able to just be in the moment and try to accomplish all the check boxes of a draft that I'm trying to accomplish. Much harder when you're, 8 hours later, you're trying to get back into a draft and you have 39 other drafts that you're thinking about the structure of.
Right, exactly. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump in the puppy, and then I'm going to ask you a few more questions. I think you were going to hop in this one with me. So if any viewers want to try and get in this one, I'm going to enter it right now.
Okay. I'm going to try to as well. Let me see.
Oh, couldn't detect location. It's not good.
You've drafted too many drafts. That's why.
The worst thing is if we get into two different rooms. Oh,
I know.
that's not good.
I'm waiting.
I'm going to enter it on my phone,
Okay.
and then it's the workaround. It's so funny because I was telling Brian before the show, I'm up to doing 8 at a time on in the puppy
Psycho,
too,
dude.
and this happens like so. As soon as one ends, I'll try to re-enter the next one, and it'll give me that location thing. I'm entering right now on my phone.
Okay.
So one more to start.
Okay. Is it filled yet or no?
Yeah, it's filled. Are you in this one? I can just get in another one if
Uh,
not, and draft this one off of
no,
the
I'm not.
screen.
That's fine. I'll provide commentary and give you help to win 75K on this one.
All right, let's do it. 75. Are we coming in second?
Oh no, it's 100K. My bad. So I'll help you win 100K on this one.
Second's only 60K. So
There we
yeah,
go.
we want that 100. So we got the seventh pick here, and so one of the questions I want to ask you when you have that many slow drafts, what's like the pick number that you've gotten the most?
Yeah. So right now I'm looking here. And of my 40 drafts, 21 were in the top six. So it was basically 50-50. But I didn't have a bunch in the 6 to 7 range. So I only ended up somehow in 40 drafts with one Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is great. So this is a great a point of emphasis. Now, when I do my next batch, I need to get more Amon-Ra when I'm looking at Jefferson, Chase, Bijan, Brees Hall in that range. That was the first thing I noticed right off the bat.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about because since I'm doing so many fast drafts, I'm basically just taking the first round at ADP. And then sometimes I'll have 8 at a time. Maybe I'll have 3 with Jamar Chase or 3 with Bijan Robinson. And so I'm sure you have a bunch. Like you said, you only have one Amon Ra, so you're probably overweight on other guys around them. How much are you thinking about switching up your pick in like the second and third round so you're getting different combos? And it's a little different than doing a bunch of fasts or if you're only doing a couple fasts a day because it's like you just made this pick yesterday. Like you just picked Amon Ra 3 times yesterday, and now you're on the clock at pick 15 in 3 different drafts.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and a lot of the research we've done has shown that, and again, it's going to come out in our best ball guide, which is releasing here shortly. But we've looked at individual player exposures doesn't necessarily correlate to end of season success in best ball tournaments. Really, it's about how you combine those players, and we know that trying to get as many different combinations as possible is optimal, right? And so what I've been doing, I have a spreadsheet up, and we'll talk about these automated tools here in a second. But what I've been doing, if I have, let's see, one, two, three, four, I have 6 Bijan teams in this 40 draft batch. I want to pair a different player in the second round with each of those Bijan teams. Same with my Jamar Chase, same with my Justin Jeffersons. All these guys get 6 different combos, and then still trying to keep track this whole matrix of which combos are with which guys. And then as I do more drafts, adjust to try to balance that out.
So that's one thing that I still struggle with in like everything in DFS, in this and pick six, is like spreading out my exposures of combinations of guys. And so last year it definitely worked out for me. I had 8 finals teams, and 6 of them were very, very similar. 2 of them were
Yep.
CMC, and the rest of them had like Amari Cooper, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Kyron. And it's not going to be like that every year. If those players didn't work out, I would have just bricked.
Right.
And so even more so, I think it's really important to get different combos in the first few rounds. But how much are you like? How much more important are the early rounds differentiation versus getting different sets of guys in the later rounds?
Yeah, the early round is much more important to me. I'd rather have as many different combos of early guys, and the guys I feel better about, the guys I will be overweight on in rounds 10 through 20 or 10 through 18 on Underdog. I want different combos with those guys, right? So let's just, like, in a very rare example, let's say I loved, let's just say Blake Corum, right? Just random guy. I love Blake Corum. I have 50% Blake Corum. I don't, but in his theory, let's say I have 50% Blake Corum. I don't want all my Blake Corum teams to be similar, because if I'm the
Mhm.
thing I'm betting on is Blake Corum being right, I want to let as many combos as possible enter my Blake Corum teams. That way, if I'm right about Blake Corum, I have 50 different ways he can win me $1 million or 1.5 or 100K, whatever it is. So I think this, by diversifying your early guys, it's a great way to supplement being heavier on later guys, where I won't worry as much about those guys being in different combos. I'll already have differentiated these early guys enough.
And even beyond the player combos, are you like how aware are you trying to be about different roster builds? Elite QB, elite tight end, heavy running back, zero running back.
I have that noted as well. It's not something I truly care about, because I'm going to end up, at least on the first, I would say, first 6, 7 rounds, I'll be relatively even weight on most players, 8% or so. Maybe that goes 6%, 10% one way, but whatever. So I'll be keeping track of that. I'm not necessarily trying to get overweight on elite quarterback or overweight on elite tight end or overweight on zero running back. I'm just letting the drafts fall as they will, but I'm just making sure that each individual draft is built properly. If it looks like zero running back, taking enough running backs, etc.
Okay, nice. And do you like Olave here, or you have a strong preference towards someone else?
I like Olave. I have no
Okay.
preference.
Yeah. So, back to this draft, we did get Bijan in the first round. Just like I said, we're drafting pretty much at ADP, and I'm pretty happy with how even I am in the first round. I think I'm a little down on AJ Brown, but I mean that's pretty easy to even out.
Yep.
And then the second round, I mean, I have my exposures. This is specifically in the puppy too, so this is through 67 puppies. Like you saw, I was super overweight on Brandon Ayuk,
Yep.
but I'm pretty happy with how even I am on these guys. I do like Malik Neighbors more than the 3% suggests, but 70 is still a relatively small number of drafts to, really spread it out. But it is interesting because I've showed my exposures last time on stream, and um, I don't know if I had any puppies by then. So those extra puppies, I'm a lot more even in my exposures. I only have 5 or 6 guys over 20%. I think
Oh,
one
nice.
guy over 30%. And so that's something that's naturally just going to happen as you get more drafts in.
Yeah, and we've seen again, this will be in our best ball guide as well, but we've seen some of the biggest winners, their top exposure is like 30% on a player.
Hmm.
You will see some users with tons of entries sneak in that have 50, 60% of one player, and half the time, and probably more than half, that player is not even integral to that team's success. So uh, as we talk about these tools, one of the ways that tools have become more useful is diversifying, is balancing exposures. And the person that comes to mind for me, Chuck, is Shady Advice. He finished third last year. I believe it was third in Best Ball Mania, but he's known for his simulations in DFS. And this is a guy I met down at the World Fantasy Football Championship back in December. extremely smart dude, talks about his simulations. I assume, I don't know this for a fact, but I assume he brought those ideas over to best ball. I don't see why he wouldn't. And it's no surprise that he had balanced exposures across the board. He was able to differentiate. And I believe you listened to a podcast with him recently too as well, and he kind of talked about the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's really gets the gears turning because so a lot of the stuff we talk about in the show, I mean, we're doing so many a week. It's hard to just talk about the same structure stuff over and over again. So a lot of it
Right.
does end up being player takes. But I really like this discussion. Like this is what I tune into best ball shows for, is to hear stuff like this. And so yeah, that was a great podcast with Shady Advice. You can look it up on YouTube. I think it was with Pat Corain. He also has a lot of good stuff. And we'll make this pick, and then what are you thinking here? How are you feeling about Kyron at this range?
Yeah, I mean, I was willing to take him in round two earlier in the offseason. Then we got the foot news, but if he's back, it sounds like. I mean, I like carrying around three.
Yeah, and it's so weird because I was so high on Stephon Diggs, and now that his ADP's fallen, I have a harder time clicking on him because he would usually have been my auto click in this range. But I'm about with the field, and like you saw, I was a little over on Kyron, a little under on like Derrick Henry. Are you picking Derrick Henry at all?
It's funny because that's a person I just do not want to touch, and I've been wrong about him for seemingly 7 straight years.
Hmm.
But as I'm trying to balance his exposure, I end up, let me see here, in my 40 drafts. Before I did like 20 or 25 drafts earlier in the offseason, and I took Henry 0 times, but I have consciously
Yeah.
taken him twice here in my 40
Okay.
drafts. So trying to mix in some combos of Derrick Henry when I can.
Yeah, I was the same way. I probably had just a couple shares before this contest, and I think 4% is probably about 3 times, and so it's still not much. But when you're especially like we're talking about mixing it up, you're drafting that many in a row, especially if they're all fast drafts. I mean, I can't click Kyron every single time.
I know.
So
Well, that's the thing you fall back on if you don't have some sort of documentation. Um, Again, whether it's an automated tool or whether it's a spreadsheet or just writing it down on paper, if you're not keeping track, you just end up clicking your guys a lot, and that's how you end up with 40-50% of these early round guys, which we have seen in the past isn't a proven winning strategy. Because Chuck, I mean, I liken these early round picks to NFL spread betting. It's so popular, so much money is being taken. Unless you have inside information, you're not going to be an average bettor who can beat NFL sides consistently,
mhm.
and you're not going to beat early round ADP that consistently either. So it's unless you feel really strong about one guy, like it's tough to think that ADP really isn't that correct this early.
Yeah, and so historically, I'm pretty sure by the time the season starts, closing line, that ADP is pretty accurate in representing the fantasy production from that season. But so that's another thing, is focusing on, like, I'm okay being overweight on guys I think are going to rise in ADP or get lower in ADP. But again, it's really hard to manage that with managing the rest of the portfolio, all the other stuff that we've been talking about.
It's really difficult, and we haven't even talked about stacking and correlation with this particular
Yep.
contest, with
Yep.
this particular draft. Really quickly, you do have two running backs now early. Is that a position you're going to leave alone, or are you willing to go heavy running back early and just draft four, maybe five?
I think right now, if I can get my favorite two running backs in this 90-103 range,
Sure.
James Conner and someone else, then I might stop at 4. So let me see. I think I just have to take George Pickens here. Another guy I was not taking before, but I don't know. I just don't think he's great. But anyone who's capable of putting up a big spike week in the playoffs, like, I can talk myself into.
That's how I feel as well. Yeah, exactly.
Um, and on the two running backs thing, I do this when I'm drafting 8. I do it when I'm drafting 1. This is what I'm talking about. I don't think it's necessarily a mistake, but if I remembered I had Bijan in the first round, I don't know that I would have taken Kyron.
Well, you're doing so many. It's just like it's easy to make these simple mistakes. Um, but let's talk about these automated tools, because you see up on screen. I believe you have the Spike Week browser extension that helps you out, and I know there's been tons of conversations on Twitter, at least this week. And honestly, Chuck, the I've seen some people speak out against them, but the consensus I've seen is that most high volume players are like, I don't care about it. Let people do it. It's going to push people into more similar builds, et cetera, et cetera. To me, that feels like the wrong take. It feels like simulations in DFS. It feels like add-ons or simulations in poker, which you're familiar with, that make the game sharper. It takes decision making out of a human's hands, which inevitably is going to make the game tougher.
Oh, I completely agree. And I've played poker for a long time online, like a lot of volume online. And so I've seen it firsthand how these types of tools, like I've always used a HUD, and which I feel is similar to the Spike Week overlay. Like I'm getting an advantage from it, right? But it's information that is available otherwise, right?
Sure.
I'm not, uh, and then, but now lately in online poker, like, so it's RTA, real time assistance, where it shows you the perfect play literally for every situation. And
Like,
that's
how's that
kind of,
allowed?
oh, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay.
But the problem is, it's hard to. How do you enforce it?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of like this new tool from Legendary Upside, where it literally just tells you who it thinks the best player to take is based on your team, the way the rest of the room is drafting, stuff like that. Like that's very close because it's telling you what the optimal play is. And so one of the reasons that I like best ball DFS, even like playing live poker is because I'm making decisions against other humans. I've talked about this. Like,
Yes.
I think that naturally I have a better understanding of this stuff, but I'm also going to put in way more work than everyone else.
Yes.
But if that work that I put in is being negated by these people, paying money for these tools, I don't love it. And I'd be tempted to take Trey McBride here, 9 picks past ADP, but I need another receiver here, so I'm going to take Jaden Reed.
That's fair. McBride fell in a couple of the drafts I've been doing too, so that's interesting to see.
He's
Uh,
falling in every draft. There's a few guys that are falling in like every draft I'm doing, and I don't understand it.
yeah, I don't know. Really quickly back to the poker points.
Yeah.
You said you're doing 8 drafts at a time this week. How many when you would you multi-table online? How many tables would you play at a time?
Poker, during the peak, I'd have like 14, 6 on one monitor, 6 tables on the other. And then it just, because the idea is like early, kind of like a autopilot early. And then by the time I'm deep in tournaments, I'm only on a few tables so I can focus better.
But you would never multi-table cash games.
Not more than 4.
Okay,
Yeah, cash games, not like tournaments, because tournaments, decisions are usually insignificant early, but in cash games,
sure, sure.
it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I can never personally before Black Friday when I played, I could never multi-table that much. But I would know people that would 32, 64. It's like, how the hell are you possibly doing this?
Well, it's
Crazy.
like everything that I do, like especially best ball. Like I'd rather enter 10 small entries rather than one large one.
True,
And so
true, true.
I was the same way in poker. That's how I am in DFS. And so that's just,
That's
I
fair.
guess that's the way my
That's
mind
fair.
likes to do things.
Yeah.
But so even beyond the real time assistance is bots where there's not even a human clicking it. Like real time
Right.
assistance, it shows you what the correct option is, but there's a human clicking it, and
Right.
that's where Underdog said they drew the line. You can't have an auto picker. Like as long as you're making the pick, it sounds like you can do whatever you want. And with the advance of some of these tools, we'll have to see how their stance on that changes.
Yeah. I mean, that's because I haven't seen an official statement from them. I know people brought it up on Twitter this week. I haven't seen anything official from Underdog. But yeah, so like the tool's now saying your best pick based on the draft room is this. The next logical step is the best pick based on your draft room and your current exposures is
Yeah.
this,
Yep.
which is essentially fully solving it. And if people don't see that, it's extremely short sighted, and they believe that they are smarter than a computer, which is just not the case. So, um, yeah, I've seen it from a lot of successful best ball people who grind out thousands of drafts, and they feel that way. And I do not believe that is true. It's unequivocally cannot be true.
Yeah, it's so the tool is in its infancy right now. It's with their rankings and without exposures, but once they let you input your own rankings and enter your exposures, then yeah,
Right.
it's not a game I'm as excited to play.
I agree. I totally agree. And again, it's like simulations in DFS. It's like you said, like real time assistance in poker. And again, it's just a different game that you're playing, and the 99% of our average viewers are not doing those things.
Mhm.
So um, again, I'm doing these things, but by hand, right? And tracking in my spreadsheets and whatnot. And with our tools at Occupy Fantasy, our Stack Seeker and our ADP tool. But again, that puts everyone on a level playing field. Again, when you have people who can just click, see one piece of information, click, one piece of information, click, and now they can do 20 drafts at one time
Mhm.
without making mistakes like you maybe have been making, Chuck.
Yeah, and I've been using the tool. They released it. There's like a free stress test right now if you're a monthly subscriber over there. And I think, I don't know if I mentioned this on stream or before stream, but I'll be on the clock in 3 drafts, and I can't just make a snap decision in each one. Sometimes, especially later in the draft, I got to think, and it's like I
Sure.
just click over the tab, click whoever it says is the best recommended, and like obviously the pick is going to be good, and it's kind of helping me spread out my exposures, getting guys I'm not usually getting. And so that's interesting. I don't think I'm going to pay for it after, but I wanted to try it out.
Sure. I mean, you have to. Yeah. Again, I haven't paid for it, so I can't really truly speak on it. But the fact that what you're describing explains exactly what we should be concerned about. Because again, if you don't have that tool, and a vast majority of people drafting will not have that tool, it is drafting optimally for them. So again, I don't want to turn this into a whole soapbox session about these tools and whatnot, but I do think it's important, and it's something that Underdog needs to address sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and we'll see how that turns out once more people use it, or I guess what we'll see the effect of it, and hopefully that's when they come down on it. But
Yeah.
so we do have 2 early running backs. We've got 4 early-ish round receivers. Jaden Reed and Chris Godwin, 2 guys I'm clicking on a lot, so pretty happy with that.
Yep. I'm just pulling up your on the Occupy Stack Seeker on my side just to see if there's any correlations we're looking at here. On Green Bay, Pittsburgh, New Orleans. Yeah, nothing stands out to me. So, what are you thinking for stacks right now? Correlation, quarterbacks. What is your lineup thinking here?
So if nothing else, I can always get Baker Mayfield, hopefully as my QB2. If I can get Jordan Love, so when I have Jaden Reed in this range, if I can get Jordan Love at 103, I'll usually take him every time. I know I mentioned maybe I'll get another running back and stop at 4, but I'd rather have that, the mid-range quarterback that I think is most undervalued in Jordan Love.
Cool.
I mean,
Okay.
Derek Carr is there too, but it's like Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and what Justin Fields is not a great feeling quarterback room. And
Sure.
this is something I wanted to mention too. So I've had a bunch of finals teams over the years that are very weak at quarterback. And so
Yeah.
that tells me that, I'm getting better skill position players and I'm getting there, but I don't know. I mean, I just haven't had that bad quarterback spike week in the playoffs. So that hurts too. But how much of that, just, I need to even it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's fair. And again, one of the things I looked at as I was looking at my exposures is I don't have enough of the elite quarterbacks, so I'm trying to rectify that as well. Um, but I agree. I think in the past I felt the same way about lower end quarterbacks. I'm not necessarily sure I feel that way this year. So this goes back to the point I think we were talking about this on Tuesday. It's like past trends, they're nice, but this year feels completely differently, especially based on how people are drafting. And again, just back to the point of people drafting sharper, whether it's with tools or without, the wide receiver ADPs, which we've been talking about since April, is the best indication of this.
Yeah, and it's so weird because we still have guys moving up, like Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, and then I put DK Metcalf as the cover for the YouTube stream today because
Yeah.
he's up. I mean, it's only like 3 spots. Wait, no, 2 point. Sorry, I can't read. 2.3 spots in ADP, but that's kind of significant when he's a early third round pick.
It's a 10% jump. Yeah.
And then since we're on this, just looking at a couple of the other guys here, Jalen McMillan, Elijah Mitchell makes sense. McLaughlin, my favorite guy. Love to see him move up.
Yeah.
Looks like Tyrone Tracy's taking it back from Eric Gray a bit. I mean, anything else stand out here towards the top of the list? Rashi Rice.
Yeah, Rashi, I guess maybe people the dip dropped too far with the potential suspension. Joshua Palmer's interesting. I've seen some rumblings about, why is he not the wide receiver one? Not why is it Lad McConkey? So I think that's why there too. John was interesting on a good offense, big play guy. So I mean, all these make good amount of sense to me. Nothing stands out or any significant takes that we didn't discuss on Tuesday.
I will say, yeah, I think I mentioned I'm drafting a bunch of Rashi Rice, and he's one of my highest exposed players in the puppy too.
You would love to hear a news item of a no suspension then and see him go all the way up to round 2 or 3 then.
I would love it. Yeah, I mean, I would feel like I already won, just like on that alone. However the season goes.
Sure, definitely.
And then fallers, we see Jawan Johnson fall through the floor, minus 30, ADP 204. No one wants him anymore. Did you look any more into his injury, and are you interested in drafting him for if he's back for maybe the playoff rounds?
Yeah, I'll draft him in 3 tight end builds. I haven't seen anything except lower body injury, I think, or leg injury, whatever it was. So who the hell knows what that means?
Oh man, and this is such a tough spot. Like this is why it's so important to get those receivers early because they're gone by pick 90.
I know. Is it Jordan Love time? Should we just take Love here?
I think I'm just going to take Love because if I was going to take another running back and be done, but yeah, Jordan Love's going to help this team more than like James Conner, and you can see how overweight I am on James Conner.
Oh,
Uh,
Jesus, yeah.
I don't know if I need to spread it out a little bit more, but I can work on that in my second half of drafts. 0% Zamir White. We talked about that the other day.
Yep. We could take a couple of Zamir White if you want to. But again, the thing I like about Love right now, you could take Dobbs, you could take Dante Wicks, you could take Luke Musgrave, you could take Tucker Craft late, take Bo Melton, who Chris talked about on Wednesday. Like there's, plenty of stacking options after you get an anchor in Jaden Reed.
It's funny you mentioned Bo Melton. The other day, I don't know if maybe Chris mentioned him in our staff chat or something, but someone got me on Bo Melton, and I was in the last round of 5 or 6 slow drafts, and I took Bo Melton in all of them, and now I have 12% Bo Melton after not taking him at all for the first 2 months of drafting.
So funny how that works. I think it was like a beat writer's note about how training camp and OTAs are going or whatever, and it was like, yeah, Bo Melton, don't forget he's still around, can provide a deep threat, and everyone's like, 18th round click here.
Yeah, I mean, I need to find an 18th round receiver. The 18th round running backs are pretty tough to come by too, but I think we'll have more clarity on that by August. So usually try to have my running back room by then. But like late round receivers, I mean, I'm clicking a lot of Khalif Raymond.
Yep.
And DJ Shark is probably the other one I'm clicking the most. But I want to mix it up, like you suggested. Jalen Hyatt, I have 1% now. I had 0% before, so
I'm just trying to at this rate in June, 18th round. I'm trying to take receivers who we know are going to be on the roster, right? We know we're going to at least play some snaps, because it is very easy to try to get different and click some guys in June that end up not playing for long stretches at a time, which is not exactly what you want in June.
No, and we mentioned this on the last stream. Just having dead roster spots reduces your chances so dramatically. So we are going to take Tyler Lockett. Mentioned one of my goals with my next set of drafts was to get more Seattle guys, and I've done that recently. A lot more Kenneth Walker, Metcalf, Lockett.
Yep. Yeah, let's get Lockett in there. While you queue him up, question from CW89 says, how many quarterbacks do you typically draft? Good question. What's up, CW? Thanks for checking in. Thanks for tuning in live on a Friday. Chuck, I would say 2 is typical. If you go a bunch of late guys, maybe 3. How are your builds shaking out? More 2, more 3?
In 20 round drafts on the other sites, almost always 3. But in the 18 round drafts, so just my style of drafting, I lean towards late quarterback. So a lot of 3 QB builds. But it just depends who your first quarterback is, who your second quarterback is. Because even when I have an elite quarterback, I'll have like Derek Carr or Bryce Young as my second quarterback. I'm pretty okay with that. But if like in this build, Jordan Love, I might be okay ending up with 2 quarterbacks depending on who my second one is. But it just depends on your specific team, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. If you draft an early quarterback, CW, normally you're just taking 2. If your first quarterback is drafted in the mid rounds or, God forbid, later rounds, then you normally end up taking 3. Shout out to Eric Polzine, who's one of our analysts here at Occupy Fantasy, runs 925 Sports. He's in Wisconsin, so he says, I think the pick would be Malik Heath, not Bo Melton. Not sure I see a good path for either of them unless Watson misses a lot of time again. One, not a huge if Watson misses a lot of time based on his hamstring history, but always good to get some inside info. So maybe Chuck, you can start mixing in some Malik Heath in round 18.
I'll remember that at least, yeah. And then when I see 6 tweets about him in one day in August, I'll remember this and say, yep, he told us, and we listened or we didn't.
Yeah. King of QC in the chat says, first time catching your content. He's in the 2 spot. He says, am I reading this correctly, Chuck? Is there someone in the 2 spot, King of QC in your draft?
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's great to see you. Curious how you found the stream.
Yeah, let us know, King of QC. I got the badge there to let us know that he drafts a lot of drafts as well. QC, how do you think your draft's going so far? Let us know. How'd you find us, 1 and 2? What do you think of your draft so far? Normally we don't get. I'll call you a stranger for now, but now a friend and a viewer of the show. How do you think your draft is going? And we'd love to hear how you found us.
And I'm going to take Khalil Shakir here. I don't feel great. Like I feel better about Jacoby Myers, and I guess actually Jacoby does have the. Would you go Jacoby here?
Dude, I'm a sucker for correlation, man. Give me that correlation.
We'll go with Jacoby Myers. Yeah, sorry, I mentioned first thing I said I don't feel great about Khalil. So That's fine. I am at 10% though. That's more than I thought I'd be, but I'm like forcing myself to click on him a little bit more.
True. That is true. QC says the algorithm suggested it. He likes it so far. So shout out to our SEO team for, for getting us across to more eyeballs.
That's pretty like the cool thing about that. Like you just see you're looking for best ball content while you're drafting a best ball team, and it just happens that we're streaming the room that you're in. So I mean, CD, Nico, Devontae, it's got to be like literally one of my favorite starts. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Pacheco. This looks like a team that I would draft. Like you're an experienced drafter, so hope to see you for our streams. I mean, you can join our rooms if you want.
Shit, if he's drafting teams like that, I don't know if we wanted to join our rooms. That's a pretty nice team.
No, this is a really good team. Love that.
CW in the chat while you're drafting. Again, if you guys have questions, if you're watching this live, we'd love to hear from you. Stop in and say hi. We will answer questions. It certainly helps the show move along a little quicker. If you're watching this after the fact, which I think something like 90% of our viewers for best ball drafts come after the show ends. So, and I understand we're doing this on a Friday afternoon, right? Not many people are watching live. So if you're watching this after the fact, you can always comment on the video. We'll happily answer any questions you have there as well. But he says, is Greg Dulcich at tight end worth a flyer last round? Seemed like he was going to be a household name when he came to the league before he got injured. He's one of the guys, Chuck, I think you and I talked about him on Tuesday. He's one of my guys I like. Again, a guy with hamstring injuries, but at least explosive, right? Not some 5 yards, catch the pass, fall to the ground type of tight end. So I'm willing to take shots on him later. Are you?
Like in theory, yeah. I don't think I've clicked on him a single time yet. But I do agree. Yeah, I'm at 0% in the puppy, but
Right.
he's a guy that I will be mixing into my late round tight ends because I've already mentioned like I take late round tight ends so much, and I hate having so much of certain guys. So
Exactly.
yeah, he seems fine. Like you said, he has a spike week potential, and that's the main thing that I want in these playoff tournaments.
Yeah. I mean, I was taking him a lot last year, and then he just, got hurt early and just could
Yeah.
never recover.
Yeah, and that's like there's a lot of guys like that who had bad seasons because they got hurt, and people are scared to click on him. But those are probably the guys that we should be taking a much closer look at.
1000%. Because who's he competing with? I'm just going to bring it up really quickly just so because the tight end room, I know they played like a million tight ends at once last year, and we were tilted for showdown purposes in DFS. But yeah, so tight end room, Adam Troutman, nothing. Lucas Kroll, preseason GOAT. Greg Dulcich, Nate Atkins, nobody else. So, I mean, this is a room that is potential for opportunity. So yeah, I think Greg Dulcich, it's worth clicking on.
And to answer your other question a little bit more in depth, I just looked up my through 129 regular rankings drafts on Underdog. 2682 and 2673 are by far my most exposed teams, and then after that 3672. So it looks like most of my teams are 2 QB. Then
Gotcha.
Depending if I have 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends.
Gotcha. Okay, so most are two. So circling back to that CW at 2 quarterback has been Chuck's primary build so far, and I think I've always done that as well. But I think you and I have talked about this, Chuck. But earlier in the offseason, when we're unsure about some of these round 17, round 18 guys and their playing time and their roster safety, is it more worthwhile to take a third quarterback in those spots, guys you'll get points from? I understand the logic there, but again, you're gonna take an 18th round guy that might get you 12 points one week. I don't know.
So I do like the idea of having 3 starting quarterbacks in the playoff weeks for sure. That's why I'm okay drafting Bryce Young, even though I don't think he's good at all. But then this kind of goes back to I lost my thought.
This is what happens when you're doing 50 drafts at once and also live streaming.
Right, and trying to handle like 3 questions in my head at the same time.
3 quarterbacks, Bryce
Young.
Young.
What I was going to say, over adjusting to last year's results, because how many quarterbacks failed, the elite quarterbacks didn't perform. And so is that one piece of information we can look at is like, it's not necessarily just 3 quarterbacks did well, just that these teams with 2 quarterbacks either got hurt or underperformed.
Exactly. That's very true. That is very, very true. Like, it's like we talked about it on Tuesday. And I keep saying this, but for those of you who missed some of these shows and, you want to just binge a bunch of best ball streams. We talked about it on Tuesday. Looking at past trends can be dangerous because we said hero running back was extremely successful. And a lot of that success was tied to just simply having Christian McCaffrey or not. So the same thing goes with 2 quarterbacks potentially failing last year. Was elite quarterbacks just were down or got hurt. And That's not necessarily the case this year.
And like elite tight ends failing last year. Well, Sam Laporta and Trey McBride were 10th plus round picks and they smashed. And elite tight ends got hurt or were Travis
Yep.
Kelsey. So
Yep. Exactly. By the way, QC says Young is his last round pick. So, maybe we're blowing up his spot here.
well, Bryce Young at just 2 at the end of drafts. Can I stack with like I'm definitely going to go with Derek Carr on this team. I went with the double
Okay.
stack with Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave.
Sure.
Like, is that a good enough QB room with Jordan Love and Derek Carr? Doesn't feel like it.
Dude, I know. Like, part of me says yes because, like, if Jordan Love is not really good, this team can compete, right? But can it win it all? I don't know. You want him to outperform. If that is the case, do you really need a third quarterback? I mean, I get it. Derek Carr sucks. So like, I don't know. I go back and forth on this. I'm just more willing to draft if I'm drafting a lot of teams. Just more willing to draft 2 quarterbacks and just live with the results.
Yeah, and that's how I keep thinking too. And maybe it's bad because in like a $25 Best Ball Mania, I might be a little bit more concerned about it. In a $5 puppy, it's just I hope it works out. And so maybe that's something I need to adjust to is that I'm a little bit more carefree in the lower dollar, or maybe that's how I just should be. Maybe I need to adjust that to the higher dollar and be a little more carefree in
Yeah,
those.
that's true. True, and maybe you actually win one of those instead.
And I had a weird decision here at running back. I could have taken same team correlation with my quarterback, Marshawn Lloyd. I could have went 2 weeks of correlation to playoffs with Ty Chandler. But I guess I probably just should have went with one of those guys since I have 3 solid starters. But I think Jerome Ford is the starter in Cleveland for most of the season, and I got him past ADP while he's climbing. And so I want to make sure I get my share of him now because I don't think I'm going to be taking as much of him as the summer goes on because I expect him to keep going up while Nick Chubb goes down.
Sure. This is actually a good question. And I think the answer depends on how many drafts you're doing. So I'll ask you this question, Chuck, and just fill your brain with some more things to think about. Someone like Jerome Ford versus Lloyd versus Chandler here. I think the hierarchy and these items can be rearranged however you feel. But when you're looking at taking a running back in this range or any player in this range, it's am I getting ADP value? Is it correlated? Is it balanced with my exposures? If you're just drafting a handful of teams, which of those 3 things do you think are most important? If you're drafting a bunch of teams, which do you think is most important? It's correlation, it's ADP value, or it's exposure balancing.
If you're drafting only a few teams, exposure balancing is not. I don't think it matters at all.
Yep, I agree.
And then as far as like correlation versus best player available, like if you're only drafting a few teams, because it's like all the money's in week 17 for a tournament like Best Ball Mania or even this tournament. So I don't know, find a good balance with both. I'm not sure that I could say I lean strongly one way or the other. What about you?
That's again just the theme of the show or the theme of best ball for me is sucker for correlation. So I would probably lean correlation, but I think when you get a guy a full round past ADP, that's worth a little more than this expected correlation. And again, only if you're drafting a bunch of teams are you considering exposure balancing as well. Speaking of exposure balancing, and I'll get to Eric's question in the chat here, but Chuck, what do you think with this next pick?
I have 6 receivers. I'm going to end with 8. Do you think we need another running back? I mean, I took Jerome Ford kind of, so I might be able to be done at 4.
It's true. I like Musgrave here for the love correlation.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm low on him, so I like that too. I stopped taking Kraft. I don't know. I got a little scared. Plus, I have way too much, but I haven't been taking Musgrave at all. Need to even that out.
Well, that's the question here that Eric is asking basically is there any player or players that you guys have thought you drafted a lot of, but when you checked your exposure, it actually wasn't that high? For Eric, it's been Joshua Palmer. Always found reasons to draft someone else. Have you just gone through exposure, Chuck, or done a draft and been like, oh shit, I only have 1% of that guy or 3% of that guy?
Yeah, I go through my exposures basically every time I do a big set of drafts, which is lately every single day. And Joshua Palmer was actually a guy that showed up that I wasn't getting enough of a few weeks ago. Like I've evened that out now, so I have as much Joshua Palmer as I want. There are guys I'm not sure I can think of any off the top of my head. There's guys that I look and I'm surprised I have that much of. Like guys I'm low on. I can't think of a single guy off the top of my head. It definitely happens though. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I see on screen right now, Kamani Vidal, you have 1%. And I know Chris is a big fan of him. I've been drafting him a decent amount. Is that a guy you're just not high on at all? Is that one you're like, oh, maybe I overlooked that a little bit? Or just as time goes on, I'll get more of him?
So I have 1% Kamani in the puppy too. I have 14% in Best Ball Mania 3, and those were shares drafted when he was at ADP 200.
Oh, cool.
And so
Nice.
I just haven't been taking him when he moved up. So that's one thing about getting early ADP value. Like I have like 3 shares of him in Best Ball Mania, which is great at ADP 200, but
Sure.
how much value is that really adding to my portfolio? Because at 200, I thought he was a fine click, and now at 160, we have to make decisions, and so I'll probably get more than 1%, but I'm not going to be at the even with the field at 8.
Okay. Okay. That is certainly fair. Certainly fair. So it's nice to get some live questions today. Again, this was a stream that was unplanned, and Chuck was like, "Yo, you want to do a stream?" Like, all right, let's do one. So nice to get some questions, and appreciate you guys hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions are great. Um,
But I will say, save your questions for Chuck's solo streams because God knows he needs some people to talk to for 60 minutes while he's drafting by himself.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to just hear me reiterate the same points 3 or 4 times, definitely tune in to the next solo stream.
Let's talk about the Chargers running back room for a little bit because CW does have a question about J.K. Dobbins. He said, "What do you think? Or is there a good chance Dobbins takes the running back one role?" It's such a tough backfield to figure out because we have Dobbins coming off the Achilles and the ACL before that. You have Gus Edwards, who's just a grinder for the most part, and the Vidal, who's the exciting, shiny new toy, but was still a day 3 pick. Um, Chuck, what are you doing with the Chargers running backs? What do you think is the most likely outcome for that backfield?
I've been taking, so I'm like hesitant to take Gus Edwards recently, and I've been taking some J.K. Dobbins at the end of like 0 RB builds just in case. Like, I
Yep.
mean, what if he doesn't get hurt?
Fair.
But I don't have a strong feeling in it. I do feel like Kamani Vidal could be 0 or close to it if Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins stay healthy and are good. But it's tough. I don't know that because Gus Edwards is going at ADP.
It's like
What?
what 10th, 11th round or something, right? Am I wrong there?
Yeah, ADP 119. So right
Yeah.
at the end of the 9th round, end of the 10th round. And J.K. Dobbins going ADP 182. And it's just, I mean, I have 7% J.K. I have 6% Gus. So I'm pretty even on that. But like J.K. I think is a great add to 0 RB teams for sure. Like I would never add him to this team because he doesn't do anything for this team.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. QC said, who is your highest percentage drafted player? I know you had Connor in a good chunk, but who are your top guys, Chuck, right now?
I can look it up. Let's take a look. Show it on screen here. I'm not shy about I'm embarrassed sometimes about showing my exposure, so I'm not shy about it. So this is through 129 regular rankings, so includes the puppies. I just did 70 of them, BBMs, the Chihuahuas, whatever. But yeah, so like I showed you this last time, and Ty Chandler and Jaleel were both above 30. It's really weird to see my highest receiver be a second round guy, but I guess
Yeah,
I've just
well.
been clicking on him a little too much. I mentioned Rashi, Jacoby, so
So again, this goes back to our point in the first 5-10 minutes of the show. Ayuk, are you going to consciously look to draft less of him, or is he one of your
yeah.
flag plant players that you're okay being well overweight?
I'm okay being well overweight, but I definitely probably I don't think I want to get it much higher than this. I'll probably try to end up below 20.
Okay.
Just trying to mix it up with guys like Jalen Waddle, I guess. Like you saw, I was low on Olave,
Yeah.
and just kind of even it out a little bit more there. You know,
Yeah, for sure. Let me see. I'm just curious to see other guys here. Again, I think this quarterback distribution is exactly what you want for the most part. A couple guys over 15, most in the 8 to 10 range, or 8 to 12 range. That looks really nice.
yeah. Let's
Yeah,
make my pick here. So I have 7 receivers. I think I am going to stop at 4 running backs with Jerome Ford.
I like it.
I could take Deshaun Watson and Derek Carr as my last 2 QBs, or Derek Carr and Justin Fields since I have Pickens.
Hmm. I mean, again, I Fields can win you weeks if he becomes a starter
Yep.
at his ADP. So it's
Yep.
hard not to click him when in 3 quarterback builds.
What pick are we here? Do I care about this pick 175? Because I'm wondering if I need to take Justin Fields right now since I know I want him on my team. Or Michael Wilson. Strong feelings.
I think you can get Fields next round.
All right, we'll go with Michael Wilson. And so back to my exposures before I try to switch topics again, but I'm pretty happy with the top here. I think I do have a little bit too much James Conner relative to some of the other guys in the range, but I'm happy to be overweight on him. And like you notice the entry fees, I wasn't drafting him early. So this is like all puppies, where Jaleel McLaughlin I have a ton of in like BBM.
Sure. I see that. Interesting. QC says one of his, well, he doesn't necessarily say this, I'm just assuming, but he says he can't stop drafting Bucky Irving 23% through 170 drafts. So Bucky Irving, rookie running back for Tampa Bay. And I see you have 15%, so you're at least somewhat aligned with King of QC here.
Yeah, and I have like 30% over on DraftKings and probably 20% on drafters too. I was drafting him a lot, and I kind of backed off a little bit because I was completely off Rashad White. Now I'm kind of not completely off Rashad White, I guess.
Well, now he's in the sixth round or whatever he's fallen to. So it's if he can replicate last year's value, it's the question is of not a fully talented running back, especially in the run game. Those aren't the guys we generally want to click, but sixth round it feels pretty decent to me.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Justin Fields. What other player can win you a league like he can?
I mean, you can't. It just in two quarterback build you can't because he could literally be a zero all year, especially with some of the training camp reports we've seen. But in three quarterback builds where you have two other guys to carry you, and God forbid he's a zero all year, you still have two quarterbacks to be in the playoffs. But if he starts any week, he can put up 30 points, and you can't get that with any other quarterback in that range.
Yeah, and so we were talking about the other day in our chat. I think Justin Fields, like overall throughout Superflex and Big Board and just everything, Justin Fields is my second highest exposed quarterback right now. First is Baker Mayfield, and it just if it works, it's gonna work so well, especially in like season long points leagues, like the marathon format on Underdog. It's so powerful because it's like the 30-point spike week possibility in the playoffs is great, but what if it doesn't come in the playoffs and that team doesn't even advance, or it does advance, but you get a zero from Justin Fields in the season-long points league? At least you still get the benefit of that spike week.
That's a good point. That's a good way to look at it as well. Too bad we don't get kick return points, as CW points out, because that would be a nice boost.
What do you think about adding Isaiah Likely as a third tight end here?
I, again, love him as a click. We know he's top 10 potential if Andrews is out. May have some fringe value this year, depending on how they balance his role and Andrews' role. So I like Likely as a third tight end.
And something here. So Dalton Schultz and Likely both have the same bye week. I don't care. I mean, even if Luke Musgraves puts up 0 in week 10, it's
God forbid you miss out on 6 points.
Yeah, I don't care. Rather have Knicks over Fields for ADP comparison. The thing is, just I don't think Knicks can do any. There's nothing Knicks can do to win a league. Like he puts up 20 and he gives you solid floor at QB, fine. But Justin Fields can literally be the difference between first and 10th place, or even more.
This is the ultimate clip for after the season. I'm going to have our social media guy Derek clip this single part where either you say Bo Nix can't do anything for your team and he's rookie of the year and integral to best ball success, or Fields is actually integral and you said you need him on your team. So either way, it's a good soundbite, Chuck.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have stated as extreme as that might have come off.
No, that's how you get the most clicks on these clips. So you have to be as extreme as possible.
All right, well, I guess I'll start adding Bo Nix off stream just in case.
All right, let's get a couple more questions in here as Chuck closes out his draft. In comments, Mr. Grapefruit, what's up? Says starting quarterback with Kyler or Love has been my favorite strategy for all best ball drafts. Think both smash ADP. Yeah, that seems to be a good start for me, Chuck. I agree. I think getting a quarterback in that range is really solid.
Yeah, love those two guys. Kyler has QB1 potential at least.
Eric says, do you think top 10 running backs will start to go earlier in best ball drafts closer to August? Find it strange they're currently dropping lower in ADP. Thinking guys like Achane, Kyron dropping into round 3, Jacobs dropping into round 4 or 5, whatever he's been dropping to. Do you think that will correct at all as we get more casual drafters later, or do you think it's just, this is the sharper best ball community taking a stand?
How could it not correct, right? Like casual drafters are going to come into these draft rooms in August and just think that they're scooping up all this running back value, and so I don't see how it doesn't. I think the wide receiver stuff is getting so extreme now, and yeah, we know it's important, but there's so much like, what if these guys finish RB1 and RB2? Like, these receivers aren't going to completely brick. This team's advancing.
Right. Exactly. And finally, who will be the Ravens wide receiver 2? Is Bateman trash? I mean, trash is subjective. Has had injury history. People are liking what he can do in the offseason from what I've been reading. But who else is it going to be? Like, that's the question. If it's not Bateman, then who the hell is it?
Well, I have 0% Bateman. I have 9% Devontae Walker, but that's just a rookie dart.
Yeah. I mean, Aguilar. I guess Aguilar. I don't mind round 18 Aguilar, by the way. So.
Yeah, maybe I can start mixing him in too. I haven't even considered him. But yeah, you're right. Like, who else is even on this roster?
Right. So Bateman, assuming health, easy track to wide receiver too. So yeah, I think you gotta. I would start drafting him, Chuck. And it's not my exposures, but I would draft a little more Bateman. Am I completely sold on it? No, but on a top tier offense, we're willing to take guys who could be the wide receiver too.
Well, like if I needed a receiver on this team, uh, like full playoff correlation is great.
True.
And before we get out of here, I know it's the end of the show. Hopefully, a bunch of you guys are still in here. So we talk about correlation a lot, and one thing, so I use Spike Week like a lot, right, to review my exposures and combination stuff like that. And one thing I noticed is that I have good numbers for my Week 17 correlations, but I'm much lighter than I expected on my Week 17 quarterback stack correlations. Having a quarterback with a receiver and someone from the opposite team. So like here, when I passed up on Ty Chandler to take Jerome Ford, I missed out on that Week 17 correlation with my quarterback. And so that's something I want to pay a little bit more attention to, because for the most part, it's just correlation is correlation to me. If I get that Week 17 stack, I'm happy, but I want to get more correlation specifically with my Week 17 quarterback.
I think that's fair. That's fair. And that's something we know that's generally coveted in best ball drafts. So I agree with you there. And again, this goes to show it's good to have these exercises of periodic reviews to know that, hey, I'm light here. Let's start to focus more on that. And that could be, structure. It could be player exposures. It could be stacking. It could be all these things. So just another reminder to always continually check.
Let's see how King ended his team. So I think we caught up with him after he maybe took Brandon Cooks. Like
shockingly, he took Bucky Irving once more. So
it took literally my. So I guess not my 3, Jaleel McLaughlin, but my 3 of my top 4 or 5 zero RB targets in Marshawn Lloyd, Ty Chandler, Bucky Irving. Like, yeah, this is literally. I probably have this exact team, dude. I love this. So hopefully we're both right, and this is a great team, and we finish 1 and 2 in this pod.
Yeah, shout out to QC. Good draft.
Yeah, thanks for joining, dude.
Yeah. Chuck, thanks for having me on here on this Unplanned stream. I appreciate it. Always learn from you, and always do that. Again, for those of you watching live, or I feel like everyone watching live has probably already signed up. But if you're watching this post stream and you haven't signed up for Underdog Fantasy, you can do so with promo code Occupy. Get a $250 deposit match bonus up to $250. So no better time than to start drafting.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for joining me. This was a great discussion. I enjoyed that a lot. So let's go into the weekend and crush your slow drafts, and let's get some teams in.
You too, bro. All right, good luck.
See ya.